because he would have area intended swing interference with this top layer, which if it's a sod seam. These pieces of sod are actual pieces. It's not one line, Stephen. It's not one continuous line around. These are pieces, like 2 feet, kind of rectangular pieces.
Was Sam Burns unfairly burned by the Scottish berm?
Folks, on this episode of Big Boy Pants Golf, I got my co-host Jake Spangolf on again.
They been on their ass, bitch, I'm on the rail. I wrap it, I bag it, I pack it.
And I'm going to tell you, this guy might be prescient, and I believe I said that word correctly, in the fact that he called that after the Rory embedded ball drop, that golf pros were going to smack balls into the face of the bunker and get relief.
Players are now going to take driver intentionally at the Open Championship to try and hit it into the vertical bunker walls with the intention of like, hey, if I hit it over the wall, awesome. But now those vertical bunkers that are at the Open Championship courses, now I can just embed it in the wall, drill it into the wall of my driver, and I get free relief.
Well, guess what? Sam Burns in the bunker smacks his bunker shot right into the face of the bunker, a grass face right in front of him, and asks for relief.
He asked for it, but to our surprise, because he's Sam Burns. Now, I thought Sam Burns would have enough clout to get the relief that he needed. And in all honesty, it was, from our point of view, from as a fan watching it, I thought it was a very fair thing to ask for relief based off of the precedent set by Rory McIlroy and other situations like it. But what happens? 3 officials are all arguing. 2 of them say yes. Sorry, 1 says yes, 2 say no. And he doesn't get relief.
Which piece is it? His ball is sitting on the top portion of it.
1 on the phone, 1 holding the microphone, and the other one just there.
I would say, Sam, I mean, the thing is, obviously these bunkers are constructed with shots of seam, right? So, I mean, otherwise the entire face would be a free relief scenario.
This rules official gets it completely wrong when he says otherwise the whole face would be a free relief scenario. Here, Sam Burns is pointing out that you get free relief under abnormal conditions when an abnormal condition physically interferes with the player's area of intended stance or area of intended swing. You've got the abnormal course condition of this sod laid down on top of the bunker wall, and it's going to interfere with Sam Burns' follow-through.
Which is not what it intended to be. So in this particular case, because they're open, if you would have been interfered by the actual seam itself on your area of intended swing, we will be giving you relief.
And his swing is actually interfered with as the follow-through, the point after you hit the ball, going through the ball, is actually interfered with this whole sod grass structure.
But the fact that you are just having relief from, interference by this, we can't give it. Otherwise, we will be just taking all the bunker faces out of play.
Hey, genius rules official guy, focus on the seam ahead of Sam Burns' ball and note that how it's going to affect his follow-through. When his follow-through was going to be affected by this sod structure, you're being a little dramatic when you're saying, well, if we give you free relief here, we're just taking all the bunkers out of play. Not true. You could easily be further down on that bunker face and not have your backswing or your follow-through impeded by the sod structure. However, here, Sam Burns' swing is clearly affected by this abnormal course condition of this weird sod structure. And then after Sam Burns hits the shot, he notes his club hit exactly in that spot.
Correct. This is actually a different rule than the Rory McIlroy issue, but it's a similar situation. And Sam Burns' issue is exactly that, where the guy that was talking on the microphone was saying, hey, on his follow-through, he is going to hit the sod seam, which does constitute relief, because it actually was like the actual seam of the sod. Whereas the other guy was talking about the embedded ball rules, which is not what was applicable right there. It was the sod seam rule. So yeah, it was just very odd because we had this, it went on for like 5 minutes on live broadcast, I think. And yeah, no relief granted, but he drilled it right into it.
So it wasn't the embedded ball because you can see it kind of jump back a couple inches and you can see all this dirt trickle out, just
Yes.
spilling out. And then actually the guy who's radioing in for the relief, he's on Sam Burns' side, basically. And he's like saying, hey, it's actually going to hit. It's in his general area of intended swing. And it's just weird to have a final guy to come in there, inspect the situation, and just be like, not acknowledge the area of intended swing aspect.
It was very interesting though, because there was a guy that wasn't on site that was on the phone with this guy, and you could hear what the guy was saying. We don't know who that. I don't know who that guy was. They may have mentioned him briefly, but he was also, having a lot more authority, it seemed, than any of the two guys that were on the field. I don't know who was overseeing this tournament specifically, whether it would be the DP World Tour itself or the RNA. I would assume possibly RNA, since it is the Scottish Open, but I don't know off the top of my head. Please don't quote me on that. It was just very strange because, again, the USGA set the precedent for Rory's situation and created this whole chaos. And we were talking about it a few episodes ago about how, hey, this is going to open up the can of worms where when you go to Scotland, we're going to see guys drilling it into the bunker faces.
To me, another interesting aspect is if you look at the DP World Tour site where they post the video, they don't use Sam Burns' name. It's just pro golfer.
That was weird. Now, thankfully, the PGA Tour, when they've reposted the same exact video in the long format, which they have done, their video is 5 minutes versus the DP World Tour's cut version of it's like a minute and a half. They did use Sam Burns' name, but which maybe that has to do with the membership, where Sam Burns doesn't actually have a membership with the DP World Tour, because this event's kind of one of those funky ones where it has dual tour status. They elevated it and changed it in the last year or two. AKA the PGA Tour was like, well, enough of our pros want to play this event, so we're going to go ahead and make it our event.
To me, another point of interest is when the guy on the ground is calling back to the guy in the booth, and you can almost see the guy in the booth trying to figure out, well, which golfer needs this relief? Because I think there's probably some kind of magic code, like code RORY, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then all of a sudden, now you understand that you have to give relief for the area of the intended swing. It's just odd that the one guy there seems on the ball. He's the first guy on the scene. He's actually relaying area of intended swing. The guy who gives the final word waves him off, and then Sam Burns smacks his club right into that seam.
Yeah, it really is. And this is Sam Burns. This is not, a nobody on tour. I hate using that word, but that's what it is. This is Sam Burns. This is a President's Cup player. This is a guy who won 3 times last season, and yet he's not cloudy enough to get relief. You got to assume Rahm would get relief there. You got to assume Scotty would get relief there. Scotty got relief for an invisible wire, a wire that's literally like invisible, to where if he would have hit it, they would have technically, by the rules, given him a restroke, like a reshot. And they let him have relief prior to the shot because of that wire. So you're telling me that you'll get relief for that, but you're not going to get relief for Sam Burns for this? And we've seen it recently as well for other events where we've seen players ask for relief from this situation. And the fans are picking up on it because the fans of the event go, hey man, Jordan Spieth would have gotten relief for that. So it's very frustrating how it seems more and more that it's kind of a different set of rules, kind of like how LeBron James gets to take 5 steps before he gets to the rim, and they won't call traveling, or James Harden gets to do his walk back before he takes a shot.
Doesn't Sam Burns' actual swing prove that the ruling was wrong? For example, let's say you had one of these rules that like you have cables on the ground for the production of the broadcast, and you're saying, hey, I need to move my ball because these cables in front of me are going to come into play when I take a swing at my golf ball. And they say no, and then you hit the cables on your follow through. It basically proves your point that this was in your area of intended swing.
There's no real mechanism in golf right now to post swing fix a bad ruling. That's something that is kind of weird about golf right now, is that there's only like one scenario that I'm aware of that you get a reshot, and that is if you hit like a telephone wire. If you hit a telephone wire, you're allowed to get, or an electric power line that's hanging across the fairway or whatever. those are like the only situations that you're actually allowed like a free reshot. So what happens, going long term if we have these continued issues? Because we're going to see more and more. The can of worms was opened, right? Now, granted, if they never open this can of worms, yeah, we can argue and we can get pissed about it and we can say this sucks. But the thing is, we already opened the can of worms. Now we have to address these issues and be realistic. Is it rules for Rory or rules for everybody?
That's a great point that you pointed out in terms of you get a redo if you off the tee hit some kind of power line and it happens and you get the redo. Here, to me, if Sam Burns' club hit the exact spot he said it was going to hit, that should be a redo because you're saying, hey, I need a relief because of this specific issue, and then it proves itself to be true. What more can you do?
Well, not only that, but like if I'm Sam Burns, I would go back to my equipment manager immediately after this because they have an equipment guy for whatever company he's with. I think he's a Callaway athlete. He's Callaway, and they would have an equipment guy on scene. I would go to him with that club that I hit, whatever iron that was, and check the loft immediately after and say, hey, look, your bad ruling led to potentially damaging on my club as far as a loft change. Because, who knows if it got bent during the process or it could have been bent from following through and hitting the sod line. Could you imagine how atrocious that would have been if he, on his follow through, had caught the sod line just right and snapped his club in half?
That's a straight up wrist injury, could be a career ender. He's very respectfully saying, hey, this thing is directly in my swing line. After he hits the shot, he says, yeah, basically that's exactly what happened. I hit it right into that spot.
Yeah.
What more can you do there? So much of golf is based on your integrity and you calling strokes on yourself. He's calling for the ruling to ensure that, I guess, his version of events is correct. He doesn't get the right ruling, and then his view of how things will play out does in fact play out. Right.
And don't get me wrong. There are some players who are taking advantage of opportunities to get drops or whatever, but this is more than fair to ask for. This is again, once the can of worms is open, you have to continue going with it. If it had been further down, I would have said, hey, it doesn't matter here. But exactly what you're talking about on the follow through, his club catches it, and then it isn't about the shot; it's about the safety of the player for that shot.
Not only that, but it just shows you when you're laying the sod. Mm-hmm. Then now you have to be much more precise if you're not going to give relief, right? You should give the benefit of the doubt to the player because you just kind of haphazardly flop it on there. Now the dude's like, hey, had you made it like a neater thing, or maybe this hadn't been freshly sodded, I don't have this issue. But because these unnatural conditions that you've made yourself, I deserve relief. Otherwise, this is going to happen. The rules spell it out. The course has created these conditions that are artificial, and now you don't get relief.
Well, and part of these kind of situations occur because everyone wants to have the perfect manicured course because, Augusta National and other courses of that kind of caliber have, increased the standard of what is expected or desired as far as a golf course is conditioned to look. And so every greenskeeper out there is trying to, artificially put grass here, grass there, make sure everything looks perfect, even if natural conditions of life cause grass to die. Well, we can't have that. We have a tournament next week. So we have to make sure putting these fake sod pit patches down. At Live Tulsa, that there were behind several greens, several pieces of just fresh sod that had been laid down like Tuesday of that week. Now, obviously, because they hadn't been grown in properly, Slugger White and all the players understood that you get relief off of those if you want it. It's yours to ask for, or even if it's on the seam or not, because of course those are freshly laid patches. And maybe they needed to have that conversation with the players ahead of time about these particular patches, because that piece that we're seeing, it's clear separation between sod and actual ground. So that's a fresh piece of laden sod, at least in the last month. So I don't know. Do we need to just start lowering the expectations as far as grass on courses, I guess? Or I don't know.
Well, to me, when I was researching this and initially thinking that it was potentially an embedded ball rule like Rory had, I didn't realize that for embedded ball to apply, your ball had to be embedded in its own pitch mark, mm-hmm. which there was this case apparently where Paul Casey hits a drive and his ball goes into another golf ball's pitch mark, no relief. So in substance, your ball is in the same situation as an embedded ball, but it's not in its own pitch mark, so no relief, though your ball obviously then is below the surface of the ground.
We need a simplification of rules of golf, simply because, again, it's just getting more and more complex. But I think until these rules get ironed out, in these type of extenuating circumstances, I do think that the players are getting too liberal of relief if their name is if they have the right name. But I think when it comes to these kind of scenarios, there needs to be a little bit more of a general standard of practice, and also just benefit toward the player. I mean, this was not a situation like Patrick Reed with the ball in the tree. Okay, this is literally, hey, this is going to suck on my follow through. I could hurt myself on the follow through.
And to prove his point, he does hit that spot on his follow through. People at home, what do you think? Was Sam Burns unfairly burned by the Scottish rules people? Get in the comment section below. Let us know what you think. Subscribe, share, and like.